Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Salt Lake City School District Board of Education meeting. Today is October 1st. Before we start the public meeting, we do have the need for a closed session, and I'll entertain a motion.
On October 1st, 2024, I move that the board go into closed session to discuss pending or imminent litigation and the character or professional competence or physical or mental health of an individual.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Vice President Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
All right, that motion carries. We'll go ahead and prepare the room. Thank you.
Bye.
And Bryce and Brian, you should get a new link is what Alan just told me. Thanks.
Yeah, you need some food. Absolutely. Oh, we getting out of here. There is a meeting back there. Look at that, fancy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening as we reconvene the public meeting. And thank you for the extra time as we got set up after our closed executive session. Today is October 1st, 2024. We are here for the purposes of a public school board of education meeting with the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education. I would like to note that board member Brian Jensen and Vice President Williams will be joining us remotely this evening. You can see them on the screens. Hi, Bryce. Hi, Brian. Welcome. I also want to just take a few moments to acknowledge our classified associations and our presidents. For buildings and grounds, we have President Elio Campo. Child nutrition, President Tanya Slaughter. For transportation, President Chris Krogh. And for the Salt Lake Education Office of Professional Association, we have George O'Connor. For SLEA, we have President Mike Harmon with us this evening. And for the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, they are represented by President Adrian Lobato. So thank you for being here with us. Up next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked Ava Hart to lead us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And Superintendent, is there a recognition this evening?
No.
Okay. Moving on, we have the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion from the board regarding the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as posted.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Sika.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, abstain.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
And Brian, I don't know if I recorded a vote from you.
Oh, Ryan Jensen, yes.
I saw his
Excellent. Thanks. That motion carries. Moving on to the next part of our agenda is our request to speak. I do have some speaker guidelines that the board has asked me to read before each request to speak portion of our public meetings. The board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the public comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our board rules governing your comments. 1, the total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with all speakers or groups limited to 3 minutes. The board will not allow public comments during board meetings that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. 3, employees and/or their representatives may not use the public comment period to address issues that should be raised through existing formal communication channels or established grievance or negotiation procedures. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the board from taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with the speaker on the topic discussed. Our first speaker is Cordero Baxter. If they show up, we will make sure to get them on. Our next is it Shaylin or Shalin Mahady? Sorry if I'm misrepresenting your name. Amanda Longwell.
Am I supposed to sign in here?
That is for the
Oh.
public hearing.
The bond. All right, I'll try and move quickly. So regarding the HR report, based on things I've said in the past, the past board meeting presentation on September 3rd, it talked about how there were still 6 special education certified positions that remained open, and according to recent reports, it seems like there may only be 2 of those, so maybe 4 still vacant. Realizing that's a small population of the teachers, that's a pretty large percentage of that population. The cost of turnover for para and special education teachers, we really need to evaluate that. It's great, again, that we've offered, you guys permitted some full-time benefited para positions, but you see every year the level that goes into replacing these positions, and you're only seeing the surface level. Every single year that my daughter has been served by this district, it's either paras not there at the beginning of the school year, turning over during the school year, teachers are gone, so a para is actually running the class, and the ramifications are to the child's education, child safety, child's inclusive opportunity for a proper inclusive education, cost of the teacher's safety, health and well-being, cost of the teacher's ability to do their job safety with quality and fidelity, cost to replace burnout teachers, cost to replace paras. This needs to be evaluated. The cost is substantial. Special education, grow our own. It was mentioned at a previous meeting that the USB provides that, so we don't really do anything. But why can't we find a way to partner with them and help feed into that and monitor it and support those individuals that do that through special education to feed back into our district? That's potential that can be tapped into. Regarding students with disabilities attendance, it was mentioned at a prior meeting that that's not really tracked because we didn't want to penalize those students. Thank you for not penalizing those students. However, by not monitoring and tracking them, you're inadvertently excluding them from being considered and not looking at the whys, because it could be they're being bullied, they're being harmed, they're not being included, so they're sad, they're shutting down because of lack of supports, and I could go on. There's other reasons other than illnesses and whatnot that they're not coming to school, not just because they're on an IEP. Let's see. The other thing is, like, general students, improving the conversation with attendants and actually looking at the supports that are there, because I've gone through the experience where the focus is either on the extreme kids that are going to fail out, or the not necessarily the not at risk kids, but then the in between, that they're not quite going to fail out, but they're not quite succeeding. So we don't have enough effort to put into the in-betweeners, so we just don't. That's very heartbreaking as a parent to just have nowhere to go because your kid's kind of right there on the cusp of. You all know that you've got a case against Salt Lake City school district regarding inclusion for kids with disabilities, I suggest listening to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. And I'll send this to you, but there's this thing about inclusive education and 9 ways to achieve it, specifically for kids with disabilities, and breaking down those barriers that continue to contribute to that failure in this district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. And just one last opportunity for Cordero Baxter or Shaylin Mahate or Mahady. Okay. Moving along, I do want to just make the announcement that we will have a public hearing, a time-certain public hearing at 7 p.m. For folks that are interested in speaking in the public hearing, please sit in the front row. There will be a sign-up sheet at the podium that we'll ask you to fill out as you're giving your comments or before or after, just so that we have a record of your participation in that. But once again, that will happen at 7 p.m. regardless of where we are at in the agenda this evening. Moving to the reports agenda, board goals, information gathering timeline. Superintendent, I believe this is something that you'll report on. And board, as you remember, in our last meeting, we asked the superintendent and her team to kind of give us a timeline and let us know about how long some of these items and requests might take in order to gauge our sense of urgency on addressing the topic of new board goals and when we might adopt them, if it's sooner or later on.
Thank you, President Salazar. Just to note, so as President Salazar mentioned, there was a list of information that you want. In speaking with our leads, Tiffany Hall, who's leading on literacy, Dr. Taylor, who's leading on the attendance, actually Dr. Tiffany Hall, sorry about that, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Dr. Taylor, Lisa Taylor, and Laura DeShazo, who's helping with our Pathways work. We are going to have all of that information for you, except for one piece. At our next board meeting, during the study session and agenda setting, we put that on the agenda for that next meeting. The only thing that we're going to be missing is there was a request around literacy to provide measures of the return on the investment on programs such as Letters or the Curriculum Wonder. Dr. Hall is looking at some information on that, but we won't have any kind of measurement of effectiveness by that meeting. We would need to put together a larger plan to do that, but she will bring an explanation of where we are and how we might be able to get to that at the next meeting. Otherwise, through those list of questions that you had asked for, we'll have all that information and be able to share that with you. So that is the update, just quick and easy. Yep, short and sweet. Yep, thanks.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, any questions? And then there were, I had shared with you and we'll post with the agenda the questions. Were there any additional items that any board members noted or things they have thought of since then that they had wanted to add to that?
I'll just add for those who weren't able to attend the USBA regional meeting, that specifically these questions about how do you as a board evaluate where you put money into programs through, researching their effectiveness. That was something that we discussed at the dinner. So for those who weren't there, I think that was a very valuable conversation. And the people who attended were myself, Christy, Brian, as well as Nate. And so I think if you had questions about how we discussed that, we would be happy to share. But it speaks to that research question of, we as a school board with our peers on other boards were asked to do exactly that kind of work in thinking through how we, make decisions with funding. So I thought that was a useful connection.
Ashley, just to follow up on that, was there anything that came out that was written down for us or specific or things we can turn to for?
I mean, I think that they will. That would probably be a question that I think
USDA will take up a bit.
But then there are other things specifically that boards raised. I see Brian raising his hand. Maybe he has something to share that specifically was stated, but we could talk about, the tools that other peers shared informally, if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Superintendent, to answer your question, each of the districts was assigned a question to answer, and they were all related to the budget. And what was supposed to happen was the worksheet that each district had was then turned into USBA, and they were going to take those sheets and compile them and then make that information available.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
All right. Well, Superintendent, we look forward to more discussions on the things that you have listed here from our previous discussions. Or anything else that you wanted to end on?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Let me just get back to my agenda here. Up next on our discussion agenda is item number 1, the Campus Safety Coordinator additional FTE request. I believe this is Logan Hall, Director of Human Resources. Thank you for joining us at the podium.
Thank you very much for having me. Also, this request is coming from Business Administrator Kersley as well. We're seeking to add an additional campus safety person at each of the comprehensive high schools and at Horizonte. The 3 high schools, East, West, and Horizonte, already have 2 of these positions, and they've proven to be, East, West, and Highland. I can't remember what I said. East, West, and Highland have 2 of these positions already, so Horizonte would be an additional new position at that school. So it would be an increase of 4 total positions, but we found them to be very helpful in addressing security concerns at the school. This is in addition to hourly positions that they already have available at each of those sites. So I don't know what else you'd like to add, Alan.
Yeah, so the memo notes that the proposal is that these are funded with property tax growth. So that's new property tax that we get in that's an ongoing. And so that's what we're proposing to present to the board. And I'd note those hourly positions, as noted by Mr. Hall, are funded by school discretionary funds.
Any questions for Alan or for Director Hall? Ashley.
So before I ask my question, I do just want to clarify, you're saying you are recommending ongoing money using property tax growth?
Yes, that is the recommendation.
With that in mind, I think there's been a couple of versions of discussions of this ask, and one was using one-time money with contracts that weren't renewed, and then there's this other idea that it should be a longer-term commitment. And I think that it's probably prudent for us to also consider committing to use the one-time funds and then evaluating the positions over the context of the next year and in the context of specific legislation and board rule that's being implemented, to think about how that ongoing commitment would fit into a larger picture. And then we could talk about it in the next year-long budget. So I don't know how other people feel about it. The other additional comment that I did send to Logan in advance of the meeting was a question about the job description and my request that maybe we think about adding some CSTAG training, which is the board-approved training for threat assessment. I think it's pretty imperative that a person engaging in school safety work would engage in the school threat assessment strategy of CSTAG training. And I did want to raise at the same time, since this body approved CSTAG, I don't know that the board has received updates, at least since I've been on the board, about how many administrators, faculty, and other staff have completed the training. So it seems like a relevant time just to raise that, additional request that we get some type of update on where we are with threat assessment teams and, administrators and others completing their training. But all to say, I think that these jobs would be valuable, and I think it would be even more valuable if they participated in threat assessment training that we approved.
Thank you, Ashley. Christy?
I'm just going to echo, I concur with what Ashley's saying. I think that it's important that as we go forward, and because we have changed the way that we're deploying security at the schools, that there has to be an evaluation, an accountability piece of how we're spending that money. Right now, with using the one-time funds, all of us have been fine with that, but if we commit to the property growth, then that is more of an ongoing. So let's just make sure that during the budget development of next year, that those are questions, that evaluation piece comes back to this body to make sure that you're comfortable with then going forward with using ongoing funds.
Thank you, Christy. Any other comments? Questions for Alan or Logan? Okay. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to move this to the action agenda if the board sees appropriate.
Before we do that, can I clarify?
Please.
So it was Alan's recommendation, we discuss ongoing. Christy and I both raised, there should be some type of evaluation that's part of that. So what type of, are we looking to approve it as written on the memo, or are we looking to approve it with some additional language based on the discussion?
So a couple different options. Just because we use ongoing resources doesn't mean the positions have to be automatic ongoing. The board could approve these for this current school year with a review of their effectiveness at the end of the school year to see if they're renewed for next year. But we'd also be open to using one-time funds with the same kind of process in mind, whichever the board feels is prudent.
With that flexibility, I think that's important, that's reflected. So I guess we go ahead and move it to the action agenda, and then when we get to the action agenda, if we need to be more specific in the motion, then we could do that. So I move that we move this item to the action agenda.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with the roll call vote with Board Member Anderson.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
All right, we will revisit this on the action agenda. All right, up next is the Superintendent and Business Administrator Evaluation Tool. We will focus on the Superintendent tool for this evening. As you know, Board, Bryce and I sent out some draft criteria to everybody on Friday, asking for your review. Thank you for your feedback on that. I think the feedback that we got was comprehensive enough to say that we feel like the criteria essentially looks good. I think Bryce and I will have some work to do to narrow a few of those sections down and potentially add a couple of different questions or criteria elements to it. But the more common thread that we felt we got feedback on was, what kind of rubric or how are we grading each criteria under each section. In some discussions that we've had with Richard Stoll, as you remember, we agreed to use the USBA evaluation tool for both the superintendent and the BA. And in the evaluation tool that USBA uses, it's just a simple weighted Likert scale that doesn't really necessarily have any subcategory or topic about what giving a 3 out of 10 means for a specific criteria area. It sounds like, based on the conversations that I've had at the very least, that there is a desire to have more specifics in the scale or in the rubric. I did have the chance to meet with Board Member Jensen, who is on the USBA Evaluation Committee, who shared with me a really unique tool out of Michigan that the Michigan State Board Association uses, and I asked him to kind of bring that example to us this evening so that we could either incorporate something similarly into the USBA tool, which Richard assures us can be done, or if we wanted to develop our own type of rubric that models Michigan's and other states that are evaluating their superintendents. Brian, are you in a spot where you feel like you could present that example? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I think I am. Can the host make it so I can share the screen, or?
Sam's working on that right now.
Okay. While we're working on that, maybe I could just give you a little bit of background. So I was asked to chair the evaluation committee for USBA. We have talked briefly about this before, that one of the services that's provided, and I mean, we're all familiar with Richard Stoll, is that evaluation for both the superintendent and the business administrator. There is an evaluation committee with USBA that looks at these evaluations, and we were tasked with reviewing them to see if there were changes that could be made. We had done a survey, USBA, and we had some responses that indicated that there was a feeling by many that the survey was too long, or there were questions that were duplicative. And so the evaluation committee was tasked with looking at this. And I mean, this is going to be an ongoing effort. It'll probably take a year or so. I think Christy's been there, you know, in some of these board of director meetings where we're looking at this. Will take time because there are some districts that are very happy with the tool, so we could have that tool still available, but then there are others that would like a shorter version. One of the things that we presented back in April, and when I say we, the evaluation committee to the USBA board, was the idea of a rubric. And for me in education, we rely on rubrics a lot. I mean, that helps students understand what the criteria for the assignment is, what the expectations are. It also helps the teacher when they're reviewing the assignment to have the rubric to guide the evaluation they give. So having said that, let's see if I can pull this up. Okay, I'm going to try and go over to, here we go. Is that showing up on the screens there?
It is. Thanks, Brian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so when this says superintendent evaluation, this is coming from the Michigan School Board Association. So that association that's directing all of the school boards in Michigan. And what they have done, well, here you'd see Michigan Association of School Boards. This is something that if you were interested in, board members, you could just type in masb.org/documents, and it should pull up for you. But without going through all of the introduction, there's a table of contents. I am going to take you just to an example of the rubric that they have implemented for the school districts and boards in Michigan. So we have talked a little bit about governance and board relations. So if you look over in that left-hand column, it's highlighted in blue, and there will be specific areas. So this would be like the question that we may be posing. And Nate in his email sent out to all of us showed different questions that he and I think Bruce, or not Bruce, Bryce had pulled from the evaluation tool that the Utah School Board Association, we had gone through and pulled out 6 or 7 questions that relates to these specific areas. So I'm just giving you the example of governance and board relations. So over in that blue column, it would say policy involvement. And then it gives a rubric showing how you would determine policy and how it's being implemented. Ineffective would be makes decisions without regard to adopted policy. Minimally effective provides correspondence from policy provider with recommendations for adoption. Follows as written. Effective is actively involved in the development, recommendation, and administration of district policies. Highly effective is proactive in the determination of district needs and policy priorities, has a system in place to ensure timely administration of district policies. I mean, you can look at those yourself and read through them, but to me, what this does because when you look at the USBA evaluation tool, there will be a question, but then it has a ranking of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And what does a 3 mean? What does a 4 mean? What here, when you have it in a rubric form, it's telling you what you're looking for highly effective, or what was something that was minimally effective. There's goal developments, materials, and background. I mean, those are the things that would fall under governance and board relations. Then what it does at the bottom, it also gives you artifacts. And I mean, those are things that we use in rubrics as well as evidence of performance in that particular policy and governance domain, or board relations domain, excuse me, governance and board relations domain. It also provides an opportunity for there to be comments by the Board of Education and then comments by the superintendent. Then when you go down, the next domain would be community relations. And there's going to be 5 or 6 different areas that you look at there. The other domain that they have is staff relations, but then there's also, and I'm going through this very quickly, and if you would like me to go back, I'm happy to do that. But I guess this is one that we have been referring to in just our meeting today. Business and finance budget reports is down in that second. I don't know if you can see my cursor over there, but anyway, this would be showing, you know, budget reports and those sorts of things. But then the final domain is like the instructional leadership. That would be like the strategic plan and those sorts of things, and how the schools are improving and staff development to accomplish the strategic plan. Those are the different areas of domain that they have. And then after you have gone through all of these, there's a way, and I'm not going to take the time to go through and explain how, you know, the evaluation is actually scored or whatever. But that's all within this document if you would like to look at it. When I was speaking to Nate about this on both Thursday, and then he asked me today as well, he was just, I think, trying to have me give some examples. So I'm just going back up to the top one. Sorry. Of how you would develop the actual rubric to support whatever the question was that you were asking. Nate, I don't know what more you'd like, or.
No, I appreciate it, Brian. I think this example was really helpful, just based on the feedback that we got about having just a little more specific elements to what a 1 through a 4 meant. And so we wanted to bring this and share it with you. Again, in talking with Richard, he feels like the tool that USBA uses is super adaptable, and that these elements could be incorporated into it. The Likert scale could be, trimmed down to be 1 through 4, ineffective to highly effective, and so on. It's really just the will of this board to determine what we want that tool to look like, or if we would like to model ourselves after what Brian presented, or use something similar.
And the thing that I will tell you is there are several school boards in Utah that have expressed a real interest in having this sort of rubric available. And I will be at a USBA board meeting on Friday. I was going to give that in my board report, but I'll just refer to it now. At 11 o'clock, before that board meeting, there will also be an evaluation committee meeting where we're continuing to work on these different evaluations.
Board members, what are your thoughts?
Can I just mention, Brian, if you could capture that URL and send it to us?
Yeah, I'll do that.
That would be great. One reason is I'm looking it up on the web, and the one I'm finding looks a little different than what you're showing, and
Oh, okay.
the one
All
I
right.
like yours because it has 4 categories. The one I'm seeing online has 3. It might just be
Okay.
good to be able to see both and how they're done. The
Okay.
other piece is just to mention that creating the rubrics is hard.
Oh, yeah.
It is
I
just
mean,
so
that's why
time-consuming
I have said,
Yeah, if US,
I mean,
yeah.
this is something that's an ongoing task. I mean, this can't be, the evaluation came back to the board and said, you know, we wouldn't be able to have this, you know, at our next meeting. This will take months, you know.
Yeah, I think it would take
but
months to figure out, but I like well, as superintendent, I like the idea of it, but I like the idea too, if USBA would take up the creating of a first draft of that districts could alter as they see, but if they could fill that out, I'd put my vote for that one to at least get us started.
Well, thank you. I think that what we could do in the interim is we could be, you know, drawing just from some of these from Michigan while USBA is, you know, doing theirs in light of what Nate was saying, you know, with our specific evaluation. Yes, I will capture that. I'll send it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Any comments, questions, thoughts about moving
Oh,
forward?
sorry. I'm stopping my share. I went up to capture it and it went to buying more Outlook or whatever.
Great, thanks, Brian. Board members, how do you all feel about where we're at with the criteria, which I think we're pretty solid on, but getting more specific with the ranking and how we score?
Yeah, I personally think it is really a good stepping stone for us to be able to build a solid foundation for, you know, a really good, you know, superintendent. And hopefully we can even build into a board's, you know, evaluation as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Mohammed. Christy or Ashley, any thoughts or?
I'd support doing the rubric. And-
Okay.
And I've given all my other notes, I think, via email, and this is in alignment with them, so it's nothing else for me.
Okay.
Same.
Same. Okay. All right, so Bryce, I think you and I have some tasks to work on between now and our next board meeting. And we'll certainly talk with Richard Stoll about incorporating some of these elements into the USBA tool. And Alan, we will do something similar for yours as well. Thanks, Alan. All right, well, that concludes our discussion agenda. We have one item on the action agenda, which is our campus safety coordinator additional FTE request. Again, board members, we would need a motion to kind of get a little more specific, about ongoing or one-time funding elements for these 4 positions.
I'll take a stab at this. I would move that we approve the additional FTE request for campus safety coordinators for 1 academic year with a discussion during the budget cycle, evaluating the effectiveness of those positions and determining whether to use property tax growth ongoing to continue those roles.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion?
The only thing I would say is sometimes I think this is the part we are not always great at. We say we want to evaluate a thing and we don't put down the exact date that we will do it. So I think one thing that might be helpful as if the motion is approved is if you, Nate, are able to give direction for that would happen in the budget discussion, starting in finance committee, or you know what I'm saying? Some recommendation from you about keeping us on track when we want to hear back about these jobs.
I think my question would be to the superintendent and to Alan and to Logan, just relative to the timeline of these types of positions relative to a school year, what would be a good process or timeline in evaluating these types of positions, whether it's ongoing or property tax or just one-time funding?
Right, I think one advantage we have of these positions is the position already exists. There's already some FTE, so we have some historical data to review. The budget cycle kind of starts in January, but really hits its peak late spring. So I think, and that also would give us from a now time until then to evaluate the addition of this position. So I think if you're looking at April, end of March, 1st of April as a time to bring this back as part of the budget process is very doable.
Okay. Christy?
If there's anything specific that any board members want to see in those questions around that evaluation and assessment, maybe that could be funneled through you and the superintendent,
Okay.
and then that would be helpful, as you go through the budget cycle, to be able to see if that, aligns with the information that you have.
And again, Alan, based on Christy's comment, what would it be just like the month before you start evaluating in the spring, in April, or would it be helpful to have that discussion in January?
Well, as far as an internal evaluation, we'll probably need to be looking at that now. I mean, start determining what constitutes it's effective or not effective.
Yeah.
So we can develop parameters around it and then be evaluating it from now till when it's report time coming in, into the spring.
Okay.
So we'll start doing that work now, so we're ready for a presentation.
That works for me? All right. And just for clarity's sake, Ashley, your motion suggested with the second that we would, your motion to have these 4 positions available for this academic year, but to make sure that it's also a part of an evaluative process in the budget cycle and process, as we've discussed openly with Alan here today, to determine whether we would use property tax, ongoing funding, or just one-time funding in the future. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Babe.
Mohammed, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes. That motion carries. Per the discussion, board members, please start filtering what success looks like in these types of positions for you, other elements of evaluation that you would like included, so that Alan and Logan and the superintendent can start working on that for us in preparation for the budget cycle and process. All right, that concludes our action agenda. Moving on quickly, we've got 12 minutes before our time certain public hearing at 7. I think we should move ahead with a superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. I do have one matter of business a bit in this superintendent's report to ask the indulgence of the board in putting an item on the consent agenda for next time, but to tee it up right now and then provide you a memo about this. You know, I'm sure, because you continue to get emails about the busing struggles, the transportation struggles that we've had. There are ongoing problems of getting enough staff in to drive buses. We can't seem to do it, and we are always in an arms race with other districts on the salaries we pay, and the way we structure ours maybe puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage because we don't offer full-time work. Those with 3 tiers during the day of busing can offer an 6 to 8 hour schedule for people, and they find that they prefer that over ours, which is just morning and afternoon for most of our employees that way. With that, we have some structural difficulties behind that, but we have difficulty hiring people. In conversations with Isaac Astle, our Executive Director of Auxiliary Service, and Ken Martinez, our Director of Transportation, we have two fixes that we would like to come to the board for approval to move forward on. One is that currently there are two part-time positions that work on dispatch and oversight, making sure we have the right buses out and people there and everything's covered and we know the students are being served. Those two positions have not worked as well as what we would prefer, which is we would like to come to you for an ask to replace those two part-time positions with a single dispatch full-time person who would be responsible to oversee the comings and goings of the buses and be able to follow through on that so we don't make any mistakes during the day. So that would be one ask, is to move that to a full-time dispatch person. The second ask will be to try and incentivize people to join on as bus drivers in our district. We've talked about some things that we could do to try and get more drivers in. We will come to you with recommendations for being able to provide a bonus, maybe a signing bonus, a bonus for all drivers who stay on through a certain amount of time and meet certain performance criteria like attendance and things day after day after day. And possibly then, and sort of a bonus system that would go through the year. If you're with us for the half a year, there'd be a bonus. If you stay to the whole end of the year, there'd be a bonus. And even trying to collapse the salary schedules a little bit so you can begin to earn more money more quickly in those first years in trying to incentivize people to come and work for us. We have 72 routes right now and only 62 drivers, which has meant that most of the people doing the transportation coordination are also driving buses in the morning and afternoon. We're going to try and pull in some more people to do that. We've also had the support of the Salt Lake Education Foundation to purchase a van because we have some routes that only have a handful of students, particularly in those grandfathered ELP routes, the ELP DLI, from different areas of town. And so we can drive vans, which means that the drivers don't have to have their commercial license. That way, if it's a smaller number of students. So we're trying to figure out all sorts of different ways to solve these problems, but want to come with you. And the reason that we want to come in the consent agenda next time is just to be able to hurry it along and post those benefits and see if we can get some people on. So we'll have more detail coming to you in a memo, but wanted to give you a heads up on that and maybe get a thumbs up that that's okay to move forward that way for you. Anything else to add on that, Alan? Okay. So in celebration of some things, I have to tell you about an experience this week of going to Highland High School to watch the Unified Sports Soccer Tournament. Just a real shout out, first of all, well, to so many people, but to Highland High for hosting this. This is the first time we've done this. Unified Sports brings together students who have intellectual disabilities and students who don't, and they partner in sports activities. They play soccer in the fall, they do basketball in the winter, they do track in the summer, and it is just amazing to watch. And Highland High did it right. Jeremy Chatterton, the principal there, was on he's going to be a sports announcer when he grows up, and he was doing that now for the Unified Sports. We had teams from across the valley.
Well, he's got a good nickname already.
Yeah.
Chatty Daddy.
Yeah, there you go. We had teams from across the valley that came. They were playing 3 games at a time on the field in a kind of smaller soccer field setup. They had the cheerleaders out there to encourage them. They had teachers come with their classes so that there were students in the stands cheering the students along. I just am so excited about this because I think this is what it means to be a Dignity District, to build this in. I mean, it creates, the whole goal is to promote social inclusion. through athletic activities. Also, I need to give a shout out on this and really want to because she's just remarkable. There's a parent, Heather Brown, who has taken it on to create this in our district to really drive unified sports. She has a child with intellectual disabilities who was there to play soccer too and having a great time. The hours and effort and energy and passion that she brought to doing that just because she wanted this in our district was really remarkable to see. And one of those things that I want to make part of what we do, this is just what we do in our district, in our junior highs, in our high schools, that this is part of our program. And so I'm going to work with her and others, because I have to give shout outs to the other teachers and volunteers and parents who are there to make that happen. But to structure this in a way that it becomes really part of just the expectation. You get to go to junior high and high school and you get to participate as a student in unified sports. So as we get more opportunities over the coming year, I'll encourage you to drop by and just see for a minute and enjoy that experience of being part of that. Shout out too to Tiffany's team in the last Teacher Professional Development Day on Friday. They had a wonderful series of TEDx talks given by teachers to other teachers. We had 9 presentations for teachers and more than 50 other teachers there who each walked away, and I'm afraid I only caught the tail end of it, but each walked away just filled with all the amazing innovation and good ideas that our teachers have and bring to their conversation about instruction and curriculum and learning, just with all sorts of ideas of how to be better at our work. Tiffany and the team are putting together a reel of highlights from those presentations that we can share to just show you the caliber of thoughtfulness and inventiveness and that our teachers are bringing to their work and showing with each other. And it's a pretty great event. We're going to do a little more publicity on that one even next year, Tiffany, because I think that's something as board members you may enjoy too. And then lastly, we had our office professionals conference with more for 70 of what we could call our first line ambassadors in our school district who are out there setting the tone in schools and offices across the district. And there were presentations on the new parent portal and how this is all working. And then just some professional learning for the day. I appreciate the office professionals who were there. I had a chance to talk to them quickly and talk with them a bit. Also, thank you to Sam Quantz and his department for making that day work so well, and the foundation and our business services for supporting that. So that's it for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent.
You're welcome.
So for the board and for the community that's watching online and here with us today in the boardroom, we are 2 minutes away from our time certain public hearing at 7 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and tee that up about what the night will look like and the hearing will be. So the hearing is a presentation of the arguments in favor or against the ballot proposition that the board approved through a resolution 2 meetings ago now at this point. So what you'll hear is from Business Administrator Kearsley, both the for or the pro and the con, along with a rebuttal statement for each pro and con as well. And then once that's concluded, we will have folks from the community who are here to speak. We will hear from you. You will each have 2 minutes to speak, which is consistent with how we have been running our public hearings. We're asking that participants please sit in the front row. And so Amanda, I don't know if you're here to speak on the bond or not, but you're more than welcome to stay there. We might look at you a couple times and wonder if you're going to speak or not, but now we know. But nonetheless, if you are here to speak to the public hearing, please join us in the front row. That way we know to call on you, and folks in the audience who aren't here to speak will know that you're sitting where you're supposed to be or would like to be. There is also a sign-up sheet at the podium that we would ask you to sign up with your name and other relevant information that's on there so that we have a record of your participation in the public hearing. And the time is now 7 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Alan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll start with the argument in favor of the bond ballot proposition. This November, Salt Lake City School District is asking for your vote to pass a crucial $730 million bond. The bond will fund infrastructure and building upgrades and pay for projects that improve energy efficiency and reduce our carbon footprint. This is the district's first bond request in 25 years, since 1999. Now is the ideal time to move forward with these necessary projects as construction costs are only expected to increase. Bond funds will be used to, 1, rebuild West High School, including on-site solar power generation and a modern athletic field house. 2, rebuild Highland High School, including on-site solar power generation, ground source heat pumps, and a modern athletic field house. 3, build a modern athletic field house at East High School. And 4, complete energy sustainability projects throughout the district. West High School, dating back to 1922, and Highland High School, completed in 1956, are facing significant challenges, including outdated plumbing, electrical systems, and HVAC infrastructure. Both schools have multiple entry and exit points, which presents a school safety concern. Classrooms lack the infrastructure to support technology-based instruction. Additionally, many of these classrooms are too small, making flexible learning arrangements difficult. Rebuilding these schools is not just a matter of improving facilities. It is about making sure our students have a learning environment that provides the resources and experiences necessary to prepare them for post-high school success in the 21st century. High schools across the Salt Lake Valley have upgraded their athletic amenities in recent years. If the bond passes, both Highland and West High Schools will have state-of-the-art facilities, including a modern athletic field house. East High School will also receive a modern athletic field house, thus offering our student athletes the same caliber of athletic facilities as their peers across the Wasatch Front. In 2020, the Board of Education made a commitment for the district to pursue carbon neutrality and to use clean, renewable energy. We have reached 22% of our sustainability targets, and we need additional funds to make further progress. If the bond passes, we will expand solar power at 14 schools and facilities and install hybrid electric heat pumps and controls at 13 locations. These improvements will reach almost 70% of our sustainability goals, reducing our carbon footprint by 10,755 tons per year, equal to the amount of energy needed to power 1,272 homes for 1 year, resulting in better academic and well-being outcomes for our students. Your support for the bond will provide students district-wide with equal access to modern educational facilities and allow us to implement sustainable practices to benefit Salt Lake City students and residents for years to come. The rebuttal to the argument in favor of the bond ballot proposition as presented by Russell Askren. Imagine you need a new house. It's old and you've patched it together as long as you can. What do? You talk about what you need. You talk about the nice to haves, maybe a luxury item or two. You find an architect, work back and forth on plans. We like this. This needs to change. You find a contractor that helps with the costs. A little more back and forth. Finally, you have plans to build. You get permits. Only at this point will a bank fully commit to your project and fund your construction. The Salt Lake City School District wants to turn this process on its head. There is a need. They've added some nice to haves, some luxury items. They have an architect, but this is where the process has stopped. There are no plans. They're not even close to knowing their cost. Permits are even farther away, but they want their money now. Don't give it to them. Make the district finish the planning process first. The district's rebuild of district offices completed this year finished nearly 50% over budget. High school rebuilds in an adjoining district are around 30% over budget, leading to other projects being delayed and an increase in the district's base property tax. Building schools is difficult in today's construction environment, and these projects may take as long as 10 years to complete. Imagine the overruns taxpayers will be asked to cover. Vote no on the Salt Lake City School District bond resolution. Argument against the bond ballot proposition as presented by Russell Askren. If you live in Salt Lake City, the government wants more of your money. Salt Lake City and the sports moguls want more of your money. Salt Lake County wants more of your money, and so do the Salt Lake City schools. The schools want a lot more of your money, $730 million, wow. The need is real, but the timing is wrong. They want your money with incomplete plans and no transparency in decision-making. Consider these unanswered questions. Why are they asking for money when there are no building plans? Why are the feasibility studies hidden from public view? Why is their request based on estimates nearly 2 years old? Why are they already talking about using the general capital fund for cost overruns? Why are our high school rebuilds costing over $100 million more than nearby high schools? Why are we prioritizing college-level athletic facilities when we aren't fulfilling our basic academic functions? Why are they increasing high school student capacity with declining enrollments? Make the Salt Lake City School Board answer these questions before you give them your money. Vote no on the school bond resolution. In rebuttal to the argument against the bond ballot proposition. Architectural designs are expensive, and the board wants to ensure funding is in place before spending public dollars on designs. The bond amount covers construction, design, demolition, utility relocation, inflation, and furnishings. If voters approve the bond, the design phase will include opportunities for public input and a design committee for each school. Before determining the bond amount, the board hired 2 architectural firms to conduct feasibility studies, which included public meetings and a community survey. Findings were presented at the board meeting on February 21st, 2023. A summary is attached to that agenda, and full reports can be found on the district website. In July of 2024, the architects were asked to review and possibly update their 2023 cost estimates. This informed the final bond amount. It's crucial to have a plan to complete the projects if initial cost estimates are too low. Bonds for neighboring high schools were secured nearly a decade ago. Since then, building costs have significantly increased. The district works with financial advisors to ensure the best outcomes for students at the lowest taxpayer cost. The architects provided detailed estimates that include all necessary costs, not just construction. Under professional advisement, $730 million is an appropriate bond amount. The athletic field houses at West, Highland, and East will support high school level extracurricular and physical education needs, with potential uses for other classes and general school activities. Final building capacity will be determined during the design phase and will be based on current and projected student counts.
Thank you, Alan, for reading all of those statements. The time is now the community's time. So if you are here to speak in the public hearing regarding the bond resolution that the board passed, the floor is yours. The podium is open. Just please remember to sign up when you get up there, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
My name is Russell Askren. As you might recognize, I'm the author of the statements against the bond and the rebuttal to the argument for the bond. As the board knows, I'm opposed to this bond. For the most part, my concerns are not over whether there is a need for the items in the bond. It's about the lack of transparency and planning in the process, which may lead to failure. Although I'm slightly encouraged by some of the information that has been recently released and wasn't available when I wrote my statements, the fact remains that the district is not ready for this bond. If I were to ask you what facilities the high schools will include, you have no answer because there are no plans. If I were to ask you why these schools will cost so much more than other high schools, you have no answer because there are no plans. Wise builders know what they are building before they borrow money. The district is setting itself up to fail. The district's last major building project, completed just a few weeks ago, ended nearly 50% over initial cost estimates. That should send a warning to the board and the district about how challenging these substantially larger and longer projects will be. The projects need to proceed more carefully. Further, the timing and sizing of this request is dismissive of Salt Lake City taxpayers, whose tax burdens are rising substantially this year, even without the school bond. Even as we speak, just 2 blocks from here, the City Council is holding a hearing about the 0.5% sales tax increase for the sports entertainment zone. Most people consider it a foregone conclusion that the tax will be approved despite overwhelming citizen objection. Finally, the Y2K analytics survey from June of this year indicated that over 80% of the residents of Salt Lake City can't say the district is headed in the right direction. Only 8% strongly agree that the district manages its money well. That is a tremendous absence of trust and confidence. Transparency, improved planning, and respect for city taxpayers is the route to regain this trust. It's also the route to a successful rebuilding of West and Highland High Schools.
And Russ, did you fill out the sign-up sheet?
I signed it.
Okay, thank you. Before our next speaker, I also want to acknowledge that the statements, the pro and the con, and of course both rebuttals for the pro and con statements are available on our website. Up next, please join us at the podium.
My name is Lauren Barlow. I have 3 kids in the district, and next year I'll have 4. I printed out the sample ballot available, and I'd like to read a part of it and then ask some follow-up questions. The ballot asks if voters are in favor of the issuance of $730 million in bonds, quote, for the purpose of raising money for constructing buildings, acquiring land and furnishings, and remodeling and updating existing school property under the charge of the board, end quote. It goes on with more details. If voters approve this bond, could the school board revisit the possibility of a West Side High School and use some of the $730 million to acquire land and construct buildings for a West Side High School? Second question, if the board could not revisit the possibility of a West Side High School with the newly approved $730 million, why not? Another question. Given that the district holds the property of 4 recently closed elementary schools, Hawthorne, Benyon, Mary W. Jackson, and Riley, were any land swap deals explored in the search for land for a West Side High School? Several of these elementary school properties lie in highly desirable, valuable locations, and it seems a land swap could be an ideal solution among government entities to procure necessary land for a West Side High School. If a land swap was not explored, why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
All right. There's a lot of against. I just want to say I'm for, and we need to hear the for piece. I have 3 kids in the school district. I have 2 in Highland High School specifically, and the shape of the buildings, as you pointed out, they are not good. They're not safe. They're not accessible. You look at kids with mobility issues, whether or not they have intellectual disabilities, whatever it is, the ability to get out in an emergency is hindered substantially, and it also impacts barriers to their education, inclusion. Like I could go on in regard to the typical conversation I have, but these buildings are built during a bygone era. Our kids deserve to be in a quality school. They go to sports venues and other school districts, and they're like, this is so awesome and amazing, and then they come to ours and do athletics in our fields, and they make the best of it. But I go and watch my daughter's tennis game, and I'm like, this is really kind of sad. This is like kind of a rundown. It's really run down. It's not really an opportunity for the kids in the communities to come together and rally around their children. I grew up in a rural community where the entire community came together for the sports and these activities, and the environments in our high schools, specifically the 2 that we're talking about, are not an inviting environment and not really accessible. It's extremely hard to find parking and get your kids around to navigate to even go to these events. So I respect a lot of what was said, but I do feel that there has been a ton of conversation discussing the process, and you don't invest a ton in the plans until you actually have a go. So they're looking for the goat to invest in the plan. So I understand that. So anyway, the kids deserve it. Go for it.
Thank you, Amanda. Anybody else? Sir, would you like to join us at the podium? Thank you.
So my name is Alex Steeples. I don't have any kids in high school, but I did go to East High. My kids are just starting school, and I do construction for work. Time and time and time and time and time and time again, almost every project that I've worked on, they have a budget, and then they go over that budget because of manglement. Not management, manglement. Because people that are so far removed from the actual job site are making decisions. And asking for money without any sort of plan is ludicrous. When we bid on projects, they say the client will come to us and say, this is our need, this is the materials, this is what we're looking for. And if we don't even have that, there's no plan in place, you're throwing money away and you're basically writing a blank check. Because at 30 to 50%, you're over budget for things around us. We're already looking at crazy money. So you need to be adding that in there, and you're not going to. Nobody does. But on top of that, something that nobody's really mentioned is we have a strike going on. The whole Teamsters union for the shorelines, everything's shut down. Nothing's gonna come in. When that barge got stuck in the Panama Canal, it's the same thing. We're not gonna get lumber, we're not gonna get concrete, we're not gonna get food. So right now is not the time. Right now is the time to come up with a plan, and maybe next year or the year after. Until then, the schools that we have are okay. It's not perfect. Like I said, I went to East High. For me, it wasn't that bad. And maybe it's deteriorated in the last, 12 years, 13 years. Wouldn't be surprised. But the athletics department that was there was good enough. The athletics department that was at West High was good enough. And if you want bells and whistles, then go to college. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nellie Uluave. I have 3 graduates from East High and then 2 more students, one at Clayton and one at East as well. I apologize. I did not prepare something to say tonight. I wanted to listen to the arguments, but I feel an urge. My youngest daughter just graduated from Benyon Elementary. It was the last year that school was open, along with 6 other schools. That doesn't make sense to me that we've just closed 7 elementary schools, and yet we're looking to ask the people for $730 million, right? I am a homeowner in the area, and I remember my property tax going up $1,000, over 25% in just 1 year. So I do not look forward to adding to those tax burdens as well. I don't know what is wrong with the field houses now, but I don't know exactly what is going to be changed. I really, the feds just dropped, right? The percentage rate for the first time in a while. I really don't think it's a good idea to try to spend all this money without exact plans, because I do not want something to go over budget either. That's my feelings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else that is here to speak to the bond resolution? either for or against tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in tonight's hearing. We really appreciate your feedback. Please continue to reach out and follow our process as we move forward. Going back to our agenda, board member reports is the final thing that we have available to us. Board member Sika, we'll start with you. Is there any board reports that you have for this evening?
No, not today.
Board member Babe?
Let's see here. So yesterday, there was a women's soccer at East High School senior night. What an amazing experience. It was like 16 young women. They were, just so impressive. One, to see them like working so hard for all of those years. And this is like the night where they go and give a hug to their coaches and thank them for everything they have done for them. That's, talking about Title IX, and for these young women to feel that they belong and they are very appreciated. And so congratulations to them. Also, for school grounds, I had a chance to go and visit two of the schools that are closed in my precinct, Riley and Hawthorne. And if I were just to give a message to the community is, that is your property, that is your land. You see the signs, no dogs, and I understand, resisting that is very hard. But I would beg of you that if you see any trash or if you have any dog poop bag in your hands, please take it to a garbage. As I was walking there, I saw, some poop bags in there. And that is a property that you own, your taxes paid for it. And we want to make sure that we keep that property as, representing that neighborhood. And it's going to continue to be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Vice President Williams, do you have a report?
I don't have anything for this week, thank you.
Student Board Member Helena, do you have anything?
Nothing to report.
Anderson?
As I told Jenny, I was only going to say that the Finance Committee hasn't met since the last meeting, so I don't have an update.
Board Member Jensen?
I was going to report that the Policy Committee, we will be meeting next Tuesday, and we will be working on the instructions that we received in the last board meeting. So we're trying to get those addressed as quickly as possible. Then I also wanted to let you know that we had a school choice subcommittee meeting today, and there was a successful resolution there. So I'm just trying to report on our committee assignments. Bryce and I are most committees together. I also did want to just give you a few dates for your calendar. Tomorrow, there's a USBA policy webinar, and that starts at 11 o'clock. I would encourage you to participate in those. They generated from the last policy meeting a conflict of interest form that you can fill out, which is now required for all board members. So I think those, I appreciate USBA providing that for us. And I also wanted to let you know that tomorrow I will be attending the Red Hill Community Council along with our finance director, Christy Hart, and giving a report on the bond proposition. So I think Board Member Sweat, you reported last month that you were in Sugar House with our business administrator. I think we are working to be in those different community councils to provide what information we can. I also wanted to, I already told you that I will be at USBA Board of Directors meeting this Friday, an evaluation committee meeting. But then the new board member meeting, that's scheduled in December 9th. I know that Bryce wasn't there last time, so I just wanted to pass that along to you, Bryce. And I've been reminding each of us in our board meetings that now's the time to do your master board certification. And then finally, I just wanted to celebrate September 23rd through 27th was Legislator Day in the classroom. And we had 2 legislators that in our district that participated, and a third one, he was already to participate, but then he tested positive with COVID and wanted to postpone. I think it's really wonderful that Senator Nate Lewin, that he was able to attend Emerson Elementary, and that Senator Luz Escamilla was able to attend Northwest Middle School and celebrate our Teacher of the Year, Sarah Posey. And then Representative Briscoe, I think he's going to be rescheduling. I think this was a really positive event to have legislators in our classroom to see what we're doing and to also see how we're able to implement the decisions that they make.
Thank you, Brian. Christy, do you have a report this
I have
evening?
a few things. So I just wanted to mention that it was mentioned earlier that 4 of us attended our region meeting for USBA. And I think that whenever we have the opportunity for professional development, I think it's so important. And that night, especially being able to talk about budget and listening to the other districts and how they deal with those. I think there were 6 questions that they gave us that night. I always appreciate that USBA's fall and spring regional meetings are always very thoughtful and relevant to the information that we need as school board members. And so I wanted to just publicly thank USBA for always providing those opportunities for us. Like Brian, and I'm sure that all of you, I've had an opportunity to pass 3 of my school community meetings where I was asked questions about the bond. And that was really, it was really nice to be able to provide the factual sheet, that our business administrator, Alan Kersley, has given to us so that we'd be able to provide factual information to our school community councils. So that was, I thought that was really helpful, and they had really good questions too. So I think I was glad that I was there. Like Brian, I'll be at the USBA board meeting on Friday and looking forward to those meetings. I am going to be a part of the new board member institute, and I'm looking forward to the 9th of December. I think that it will be a great day. So Linda Hanks, who is currently the JUAB board president, and myself, both of us are past USBA presidents, will be doing a workshop. And so we're excited about participating in that day and looking forward to meeting new board members that are elected and participating, in that day. So outside of that, I think that was the only thing I wanted to say, so thank you.
Great, thank you, Christy. My board report's also really short in the sense that I was just going to report on the regional meeting that we had last week. I thought it was really informative, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to participate. And similarly to you, Christy and Brian, the Central City Community Council, which is the neighborhood that I live in, will also have Yandere Chatwin at their meeting tomorrow night, and I'm going to try to attend for some of that. I have another commitment afterwards, but nonetheless, I do think it's a really positive thing that community councils and the community at large is reaching out to the district to participate in these types of informative meetings and ask questions so that they're more informed before the ballots drop. With that, I can't adjourn quite yet.
Nate?
Oh, please, Brian.
I'm sorry, I would just interject with those fall meetings for any of you board members that weren't able to attend. There are still some regional board meetings that are available that you are welcome to attend. There's one in Heber and some that aren't too far away. And if you're interested in that, you could email me and I could give you the location and the time. They're going to be this week, Wednesdays and Thursdays of this week. And then I also wanted to just thank Superintendent Grant. With one of the SCCs that I was attending or will be attending, they sent out email giving links to where they could, the different SCC members could get SCC training. I think that's a wonderful tool for them. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Brian. So we can't adjourn quite yet. The board does have the need to re-enter closed session, and I would entertain a motion for that.
On October 1st, 2024, I move that the board resume closed session to discuss pending or imminent litigation and the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, and adjourn immediately following the closed session.
All right, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Jensen.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Mohammed, yes.
All right, that motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.